Guys, so notes today are going to be over Unit 2C, Taxonomy and Classification. So we've talked about natural selection and how evolution occurs, but now we're going to talk about how we organize all of those organisms that we have found. So at this time, go ahead and pause the video. After you guys get out your digital science journals, make sure you guys get the title and the essential question. In this video, you're more than welcome to at any time pause this video to stop and take notes. Now that you have your digital science journals, a couple things in this presentation. The things that are in bold are important vocabulary words, and things that are in red are important concepts. So let's start. The first vocab word is taxonomy. Taxonomy is the science of defining groups of organisms on the basis of shared characteristics and naming those groups. So in your notes, you want to make sure that you get the vocab word, you want to make sure that you get the definition, and I also want you guys to go ahead and put in your notes that this taxonomic classification was created by Carolus Linnaeus. So go ahead and put that, it's in the bottom left-hand corner. You can pause at any time to take these notes. Okay. So on the STAR exam, they expect you to know the different levels. And so the classification starts with domain, which is the broadest description. And as you go down the levels, the classifications become more specific. The last two levels is what we're going to use to identify organisms. So for example, Ursus americanus is the genus and species of the common black bear. So usually we make a mnemonic device. And so a mnemonic device kind of helps you remember the taxonomy hierarchy. And so when you see domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, that's kind of hard to remember. But if you look at the first letter and create a device, I've given one for you. If you guys can come up with one on your own, you're more than welcome to. But my mnemonic device is, does Katy Perry come over for good studying? So go ahead in your notes. You want to make sure that you get the concepts down that are in red. You are more than welcome to summarize these using your own words. You do not have to copy exactly what is on the screen. So in the STAR exam, they're expecting you to know the 3 different domains, which we know is the broadest organization of all life. And so there are 3. The first one is archaea, the second one is bacteria, and the third one is eukaryota, or you might hear it as eukarya. So those are synonymous of each other. So archaea and bacteria are both single-celled microorganisms and are both prokaryotes. Prokaryotes do not have a membrane around the nucleus. So you've probably seen a cell before where there's a hard, dense center with the nucleus. Prokaryotes do not have that. So that's a defining feature. Now eukarya are both single-celled and multicellular. They have membrane-bound organelles. We, as humans, are eukarya. So now we went to domain, and now one taxonomic level down is called kingdom. There are 6 kingdoms in taxonomy. So there's a lot of notes over these and a lot of characteristics that you're going to need to know. So go ahead at this time. You can pause. You can write the 6 different kingdoms here, and then we'll go in and fill in the information here in a sec. All right, so the first type of kingdom is Archaeobacteria. So Archaeobacteria are unicellular. They are single living units that can exist on their own. They are prokaryotes. They have cell walls that lack what we call peptidoglycan. So what that means is that the peptidoglycan is a structure that is around usually cells. This one does not have it, which means that it's typically easier to break down. So these can be autotrophic, which means they make their own food, or they can be heterotrophic, which means that they have to get their food from somewhere else. They can reproduce by binary fission, which means that they can just copy themselves and split off, and they tend to live in extreme environments. Okay, so some examples include methanogens, halophiles, thermophiles, and acidophiles. So the word phile means that they love. So halophiles means that they love the sun. Thermophiles means that they love heat. Acidophiles means that they love acidic environments. Next kingdom, eubacteria. Eubacteria are also unicellular. They are prokaryotes, but their cell walls do contain peptidoglycan. Sorry about that. So that means that they have a little bit more structure around their cell wall. So these can be autotrophic or heterotrophic for nutrition. They reproduce by binary fission, and these are the ones that we know that usually make us sick. So when we did the wanted posters, these are examples of eubacteria. So Streptococcus E coli, and Staphylococcus. So that would be strep throat, E. coli, that usually happens if you don't wash your vegetables very well, And the last one is going to be staph, so a staph infection. So the next kingdom is going to be protistas. Okay, so protistas can be unicellular or multicellular. They are eukaryotes. So if we look at this image, we can kind of see the nucleus having a little bit darker around the edge. And so that means that they have a membrane around there. So that's the defining characteristic between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So that means that they have membrane-bound organelles. So chloroplast, mitochondria, nucleus. So all the things that you have studied before in 7th grade. They can be autotrophic or heterotrophic for nutrition, and they reproduce asexually. So once again, they grow inside of themselves, multiply all of their organs, and then split, ultimately making clones of themselves. All right, next kingdom is fungi. Okay, so they can be unicellular or multicellular. They're eukaryotes. Now, they also have membrane-bound organelles, and the key characteristic here, they have a cell wall made of what we call chitin. I know that looks like chitin, but we pronounce it chitin. And so that's that kind of spongy texture if you've ever had a mushroom before. They are heterotrophic, which means that they are decomposers. And a lot of kids think that fungus is a type of plant. They are not, because they have to get their nutrition somewhere else, which means that they are not autotrophic like plants are. They reproduce asexually, and they also can produce spores, like on here, the white parts of this mushroom. Some examples of fungus would be yeast. Okay, well, that's what makes bread rise. Penicillium, that's actually where we get penicillin, which is a major component in a lot of drugs that we take to help us feel better. Okay, so that's fungus. Next one, plantae. So if you were to extract what that word would mean, you would think plants. So plants, they are multicellular. They are eukaryotes. They have membrane-bound organelles, so they are the ones that have chloroplasts, mitochondria, nucleus. Now, their cell walls are made of what we call cellulose, and that's kind of the crunchy texture if you've ever eaten celery. They are autotrophic, which means that they go through photosynthesis. They reproduce asexually, and so they can have spores, they bud, they can regenerate, and believe it or not, plants can actually go through sexual reproduction where they produce pollen. So the most familiar probably to us is the animalia, which means animals. So we are multicellular, we are eukaryotes, we have those membrane-bound organelles, we do need to get our energy from somewhere else, so that makes us heterotrophic. We can, when I say we, animals can reproduce asexually, and they can actually produce sexually. So those are some basic characteristics there of animals. So that's going to do it for kingdom. So let's talk about phylum. So we've talked about domain. We talked about kingdom. We're going to kind of briefly go over phylum. The thing is that this classification typically defines whether organisms have a spine or lack one. So we can organize animals based on their characteristics, okay? And then as we go down to phylum, we got to be a little bit more specific. And so in phylum, typically what they do is they decide whether that organism has a spine or they don't, like an exoskeleton, like a lot of insects. Okay, so let's go down the ladder. So as you go down the organizational levels, the characteristics become super specific. So below are some examples. They're not notes, but I do want you guys to notice how things become narrower. So when we're talking about class, so you probably have heard these terms. So if you talk about mammals, that's actually the class Mammalia. If you talk about reptiles, that's Reptilia. So going one ladder lower, okay, the next word is order. So great thing. So all owls, okay, belong to the order Strigiformes. Now all primates include all monkeys. So notice how we're getting more and more specific. The last one I'm going to talk about is family. So all cats belong to the family Felidae. And if you were in my class, you can look up on the ceiling tiles and you will actually see a student that drew a tile about Felidae. Okay, so why do we care about all this classification? So wanted to show you guys a couple things. So just a PSA, this is one of my favorite animals, the red panda. If we were to look at this red panda, based on its common name, it seems like, you know what, it should be related to the panda. So let's go ahead and check. And so you guys, we have seen this before, kind of like a cladogram based on how things are related. So we can see here that they both belong to the order Carnivora, which just means that they eat meat. But as we keep going and are more specific, we can see that their branches are broken into 3 different families. So Ursidae, not going to try that word, okay, and Alluridae. Okay, so if we look here, we can see that they branch off. And so looking at relatedness, we can see that a giant panda is actually further away than the red panda. Giant pandas are actually belong to this bear family. Okay, so that's one thing that we need to know, is that the common names aren't necessarily what that actually that organism is. And so that's the very important part about taxonomy and how we create this universal language. Okay, so here's some examples. So we have some common names here. So we have bass, armadillo, we have bats, horned frog, we got the Texas longhorn, lemons, lime trees, cactus. And so looking at these, those are all common names. So here's some issues with that though. If I look here, this robin right here, okay, we know this as a red robin. In Europe, when they say red robin, that's what it looks like. And so you can see that if we were trying to talk about organisms and try to talk about it universally, then we can't use their common name. So by using scientific classification that is Latin based, so you're going to see a lot of Latin root words, it creates a universal language amongst all scientists. That's why it's super important that we characterize them and name them using taxonomy. So here's some benefits of a taxonomic system. So when we're naming all these organisms, we can then start seeing how related they actually are. And so we can connect organisms to their ancestors. Like I said before, it allows scientists across the globe to have a universal system to work with instead of the use of common names, which we know are different around the world. It also helps us understand biodiversity. Okay, so pretty short, but here's what you're going to do now. In your notes, you guys are going to summarize using 3 or more sentences. This is what you should be summarizing about. So why is it important that we have a scientific process to name and organize organisms? So at this time, if you guys need to go back over the video, fill in any notes, you're more than welcome to. But the expectation is that you need the title, the essential question, fill in the notes, and then write a summary at the end of them. Thanks, guys.